Edgar, I think you're an observer of this emergent system from outside, and your colleagues at LAO are sort of famously known for some skepticism about whether this system is going to work or whether we ought to take the logic of local control seriously and really just shift the resources down to LEAs. And I know you'll talk about that, but I'd like you to just focus on the system and how we build that system or whether we need it at all.
So I think you actually went from instead of going by size, you went from the most directly involved in district life to the least directly involved. So I'm going to be up here and just try to talk about some of my thoughts on the system, and also since I I work for the legislature, I'll try to emphasize some of the things that I've seen in sort of what members seem to be concerned about, because I think that is important for ensuring that the system remains in place over the long haul. So I think one of the challenges I think is shifting from this panel to the earlier panel is the earlier panel is all about even I think in Glenn, when he framed it, I can't remember the phrase he used, but it was about continuous improvement starts with us, starts with me, right? Like, how do I go about changing my organization? This panel is, how do we get 947 school districts and 1,000 charters to do the thing that we kind of want, except not mandate them to do it? So that's sort of the challenge, and that's why all of these questions are pretty tricky, and I don't have any answers. I'm just going to raise questions. But I think I think that there are been some concerns, I think, with what's going on. There was that Cal Matters article. That's not the first one. There have been many that have been similar. I do think part of what's going on is this sort of replacement of, and I think Arun kind of talked about it, we went from the API to a dashboard, right? We went from categorical programs with specific rules to with hundreds of page LCAP. And that's just not easy to understand. So I think the general public, and I think many folks are finding it hard to be able to understand what is happening. I think whenever you talk to folks, we generally, when we went out to lots of districts over the last several years and tried to ask them about LCFF implementation and LCAPs, and the first thing they said, of course, is like, can't believe you did this all of a sudden, the last minute, it was so much work. And then you say, so do you like what's happening? Yes, great things are happening, people are coming together, we like what's going on. But I think that's something that I think is hard for somebody who's not involved on a day-to-day basis to see. And so I think that's one of the challenges, is trying to make that clear. So in thinking about the sort of system of the infrastructure of this, I think that's one of the things that I think is an important issue in trying to implement this, is creating a greater sense of clarity so that people understand what the roles are and what the purpose is. And I think there are a couple particular key issues, I think. So for example, with county offices, I think we think that they are well positioned to serve as a good provider, and in law they are sort of the first line to help determine whether districts need assistance and what kind of assistance to provide. But I think we don't have a lot of clarity. The law basically says right now, counties, you will one day provide technical assistance. That's not right now. Right now, what we've required you to do is approve an LCAP, and the way you approve it is based on these really narrow compliance-oriented activities. All of the other great work that many counties are doing, like Tulare, on providing all of this additional support, we haven't said that's the expectation, right? So I think members of the legislature had some concerns. There was actually some additional funding that was provided to counties in this budget, language requiring county offices to collaborate with other counties, the superintendent, the CCE, to ensure that there is better collaboration and clarity and consistency in how support is provided. So I think that's something that I think is important. I think right now in law we don't have a lot of clarity there, and so there's differences in how that's being provided. I think this does kind of hit another tension point with what we've been trying to do, which is to be more flexible. And I think in some cases, a lot of what we've done is we've become so flexible that there's not enough clarity because it's so different in every different area. And I think that is a problem for looking back and being able to understand how the system works and feeling comfortable that what's going on there is going to lead to good outcomes. We trust the process. I think there's this concern that, well, this county's doing it and this county's not doing it. We don't know why. I don't think that's something that folks know enough about. I think similarly, moving forward, I think, for example, the role of the CCE is an important one to clarify. I was involved in a policy committee hearing involved in all this, and essentially, I think a lot of the attitude from members was, can the CCE just come? Why start with the county? Why not go to the CCE, because we've been told that they are the experts, right? So I think that there needs to be some more clarity about when is the appropriate role for that agency versus others. And I think And obviously you don't want to create a sense of codifying very strict rules, but I think as long as there's a general understanding of how these systems work together, how these different entities work together, I think that can help. The other key issue that I'll highlight is this issue of time, and I think that it came up and Sarah asked the question earlier, and I think this is a question that I think members are also grappling with, is sort of, we want change to happen, right? That's why we shifted to this new formula. There have been increases in funding in the system. We want change to occur. Now, I think we have to balance that with the knowledge that a lot of this change takes time, and it doesn't happen right away. But I think as someone who's thinking about what this system will look like, and we have these sort of levels in place of providing additional technical assistance, then we have another level of sort of more intervention if sort of the intervention is sort of if you meet certain criteria and if the superintendent decides to do it. What's our level of patience with when it's not working well enough? And I think that's what's hard. How can we, and I think the previous panel kind of referred to it, but I think how can we decide at year 5, if there is nothing going on in the indicators, in the outcomes that show change, what can we know so that we can feel comfortable that we should keep going, versus saying, okay, this is not working, something needs to change. I think additional communication about that and additional clarity on what the expectations are there will make people feel more confident about the system. And I think that's an important issue. And I don't know the answer to this, but I think maybe it's trying to measure other leading indicators or system changes or other things. But I think that is an important issue, because I think there is a concern that this is just going to be a system. There are going to be folks who are in need of technical assistance for decades and nothing changes. So I think that's an important issue. I think the finance issue is, I think, also an important one, but I do think I get concerned sometimes. There are significant fiscal constraints, but in almost any, if we're going to have a 10-year, 15-year window for change to happen, there will always be a recession in that 10-year to 15-year window. So we have to still try to figure out how we can make things work during that process. So I think those are to me, some of the key important issues that I think in trying to kind of fill in the details of how the system works on a day-to-day basis, how support is provided both to the majority of districts who will never be flagged, not necessarily be flagged for technical assistance, but also then for the districts who are then in need of assistance. What are the differences? What are our expectations of how support will change? I think those are important things that I think are helpful for us then being able to reflect back and look at whether the system is doing well, but then also to make sure that there is general consensus and understanding that this is how it works, and we trust that we're moving in the right direction.